Homage to fundamental teacher Buddha Shakyamuni, homage to wisdom warrior Manjushri, homage to all lineage benevolent masters. The Dharma, infinitely profound and subtle, is rarely encountered even in a million eons. Now we are able to hear, study, and follow it. May we fully realize Tathagata's true meaning. In order to liberate all sentient beings from samsara, generate supreme bodhicitta. Now let's continue with the words of my perfect teacher. Among human sufferings, under the category of auxiliary sufferings, we've completed birth, aging, death, and sickness. We've also finished the suffering of meeting the unwanted. Today we should discuss the sixth one, the suffering of separation from loved ones. So-called suffering of separation from loved ones is commonly encountered in the world when people are unwilling to separate from each other or part ways, but often some circumstance causes them to separate. It's impossible for them to live together or stay together, and this too is a kind of suffering. Many people are unwilling to leave their friends, relatives, or family members. They always want to be together forever, but often they must leave involuntarily, bringing tremendous anguish. The Abhidharma Mahavibhasa Shastra also states, when beloved objects are separated from the body, they give rise to various sufferings. Hence it's called the suffering of separation from loved ones. When beloved objects are once separated from one's body, due to their departure, very intense suffering arises in one's mind stream. So in the world, we often encounter people who are unwilling to separate, but because their karmic connection has ended, there's really no way. Many people have no way to face this, becoming very painful and even desperate, ultimately choosing extremely ignorant behaviors like suicide. Actually, at such times, I think we should understand on one hand that such suffering indeed exists in the world. If we don't recognize the nature of this suffering, it is indeed a kind of terrible attack, one could say, because people's so-called love has narrow and broad meanings. Broad love, I think every sentient being, every person should possess. But in the narrow sense, romantic love between men and women, or what worldly people call romantic love, is completely a kind of torture for a person. Before you recognize its nature, it is indeed a kind of suffering. Once you are freed from this attachment to love, you are completely liberated, one could say. The Mahaparinirvana Sutra also has a teaching that says, from love comes worry, from love comes fear. If one is free from love, what worry and what fear could there be? If we are freed from attachment to love, how could there be sorrow and pain, terror, fear, and various worldly inequities? Because many people's lives are indeed in a state of longing and worry. Longing and worry are often attachment to love for a person, being drunk on life and dreaming of death, remaining infatuated and unawakened toward beloved objects, wasting all one's time in such a mental state. So understanding Buddhism's teachings about the nature of human suffering brings new understanding to one's life struggles and human values. So while we study the preliminary practices, we should also understand many patterns of worldly life, because people are all in a state of confusion. The people around us are all just like us, all attached to the same essence. When combined with some customs and traditions, it makes it very difficult for us to emerge from life. Especially young people's attachment to people, wealth, and status. These aspects are indeed very tormenting and painful, but they also have no way to face it. Once, like true mountain practitioners who have recognized the nature of mind, even if they haven't recognized the nature of mind, but have understood the entire essence of impermanence and the illusory nature of life, when such principles are thoroughly comprehended, all kinds of worldly suffering and terror can easily be transformed into the path. So I think spiritual wealth for everyone far exceeds material wealth. When you possess material wealth, it can solve some of your poverty and suffering. But once you don't possess it, there's no way it can solve anything. Some wealth, even when you possess it, cannot relieve the distress in your heart. But spiritual wealth, especially what Buddhism teaches about seeing through this life and severing ego clinging, as well as realizing the meaning of emptiness and understanding the teaching of impermanence. These profound teachings allow us, regardless of what kind of person we are, whether monastics or lay people, Han Chinese or Tibetan, people of any ethnicity, country, or tribe, Once these concepts are thoroughly understood and you possess them, you are indeed the happiest person in the world, one could say. So many of our Dharma friends here from the surface, in appearance and dress, in many aspects of appearance, are quite similar to each other. But some people, due to past life faith and their own efforts in this life, when various conditions come together, Buddha's great compassion view, emptiness theory, and other teachings become harmoniously integrated in their hearts without contradiction. Then, their future propagation of Dharma and benefit to sentient beings, or facing their own life's birth, aging, death, and sickness, every detail of life can be handled skillfully and joyfully, wherever they are, Tibet, Han regions, any country or place, wherever they go, their life can be said to be joyful. Of course, as we haven't achieved the bhumis or attained realization, perhaps we may have some vague physical and mental suffering. Similar sufferings can appear for anyone, but this kind of suffering won't be as extremely attached as those who have never studied the teachings. I don't know if I've told this before, but long ago a fellow villager came to see me. At the time, he was dealing with family or relative matters. He kept crying and talked about many things. After he left, another Khenpo in my house said, "These worldly people are too attached so severely." Indeed, it's true. Now worldly people, whether it's fame, wealth, many things, or emotions, completely grasp everything as truly existing. When they grasp it as truly existing, it truly harms you, truly bringing inconvenience to your life. So when we study Buddhism, I think many people, from the depths of their hearts, truly seeking the light of life, this point is very important. Many people are wandering at life's crossroads, hesitating indefinitely between left and right, with a vague feeling, not knowing direction, misty and cloudy, always this feeling. At a certain time one should seek the most bright, most meaningful, most valuable path. Such a path should be the Mahayana path. After you've entered this path, march forward bravely without looking back, continuing until you reach your goal. Of course, in this process there will certainly be some obstacles and difficulties, but we must not abandon such a magnificent goal. Now let's continue with human suffering, discussing the suffering of separation from loved ones. All sentient beings wandering in samsara are quite similar, showing great affection for their friends and relatives, while harboring deep hatred for enemies with whom they don't get along. They clearly fall into the encirclement of relatives, friends, and dependents, and as a result, for their sake, they create boundless karma and experience great suffering, enduring endless hardships. In reality, the temporary gathering of friends and relatives has the same nature of impermanence and separation. Our temporary gathering is completely of the nature of separation. None are without separation. For most people, when relatives pass away or become displaced and drift to other lands, or when relatives are driven to desperation by enemies, they themselves suffer even more than the actual victims. We ourselves, especially toward relatives and family, toward people we're particularly attached to when they leave, drift to other lands, or are driven to desperation by others, at such times they themselves would willingly choose to face the afterlife themselves or experience such suffering themselves. Some people are particularly attached to their relatives. They would rather choose to suffer such dangers themselves than let their family experience any suffering. This kind of phenomenon, I think many people should have such feelings. Especially parents show great loving compassion for their children, sometimes worrying they'll be cold or suffer from the cold, sometimes concerned they'll be hungry or thirsty, sometimes worrying they'll become sick or die. In general, some elderly people, some parents, are always indeed constantly worried about their children. So why must we repay our parents' great kindness? The reason is because their devotion to you is especially great, completely different from any other person. There's a sutra, the Sutra on the Profound Kindness of Parents and the Difficulties in Repaying Them, translated by Kumarajiva. It describes parental kindness in 10 types, each type explained in about 2 verses. When Dharma friends have the opportunity, you should print it out for everyone to read. We say verbally that parental kindness is as heavy as mountains, but in reality, from childhood until now, how has it been? Finally, even when parents are aged and frail, they still worry, especially and can't feel at ease. A mother at 100 years still worries about her 80-year-old child. To know when love and affection cease, only when life ends do they separate. There's such a verse later, meaning that if parents have reached 100 years old and their child is 80, they still worry about their child, always thinking the same things we just discussed. Whether their health is poor when they go out, whether they'll encounter difficulties, whether they might never return, and so on, always worrying. If you truly want parents not to worry, unless you leave, if you want to completely sever this love and affection, as long as they're alive, they'll always think of their children. Only when their life ends, might the mind that worries about you not exist. So parents indeed, no matter how old they are, no matter how sick they themselves become, always have their worldly children on their minds. So if a precious son or daughter becomes sick, they would rather pay with their own death to exchange for their child's health. Their one persistent concern that won't go away is their children. What they can't let go of in their hearts is their children. They're always laboring with worry and working hard for their children. Many people should be able to feel that parents treat you this way. Similarly, if there are deep emotional ties with friends, one will inevitably experience the sorrow of separation from them. Between people, there's a kind of so-called emotion. But when we truly examine this emotion with wisdom, it indeed doesn't exist. Without using Madhyamaka logic of freedom from one and many, or the logic of existence and non-existence, even simple reasoning shows it doesn't exist. But due to our beginningless negative karma, negative conditions and our own attachment, when these conditions come together, people indeed have such clinging. Some clinging is from negative connections of past lives. There's a story in the sutras. A Brahmin had a child who died at about 7 years old. After the death, he was extremely sorrowful. Then he thought he could only seek out Yama, the lord of death, to restore his life. So he searched everywhere. Later he met a group of people who said, "People generally can't find Yama while alive. Only after death can you seek him. But there's one method. Yama often appears in a certain place. If you go there, you might encounter him." Later he indeed met him. After meeting him, he requested, "Could my son be brought back to life?" Yama said, "Your son is in such and such place." When he went there, the child had been reborn as another child. No matter how he tried to care for him, the child completely ignored him and even hated him. When he returned, he was extremely sad and couldn't accept it. Hearing that Buddha was extraordinary at that time, he went to Buddha to ask about this matter. Later, Buddha said, "Why did this child say, 'I was only temporarily your son,' actually just staying there temporarily? I'm not actually your permanent, long-term relative." After Buddha explained the principles of the suffering of separation from loved ones, that old Brahmin apparently later became a monk. The sutras contain many truly penetrating insights into life philosophy. If each of us understood such insights, we wouldn't have such acute suffering in life and family. Now, much of the suffering that occurs in families and between people is extremely difficult to bear, but there's also no solution. So regarding the suffering of separation from loved ones, many worldly stories and movies, I think if people find them wonderful, performed very successfully, or told very well, the plots within are completely about sorrowful stories or the true stories from sutras, like the simple stories of separation from loved ones we've discussed. I don't know if I've told the story of Meng Jiangnu before. During the time of Emperor Qin Shi Huang, shortly after their marriage, Qin Shi Huang forced her husband to go build the Great Wall. Later he didn't return, and his wife Meng Jiangnu was extremely sad. She went there to search station by station along the Great Wall, searching continuously. Later at one station, they said her husband had starved to death there, because at that time, according to what I've read in some historical books, many people died from exhaustion and were all buried there. When I originally went to the Great Wall, I kept reciting the mantra of Avalokiteshvara, because historically some writings describe it this way. When I saw those stones, I wondered if there might be many corpses underneath. Later, Meng Jiangnu cried for 3 days and 3 nights, moving the Great Wall, and that section collapsed. After it collapsed, she found her husband's corpse, right? There seem to be various versions. The stories are all different. In Tibet, there's also one. In the Golok area, there was a woman whose husband went to war and didn't return. She kept thinking of him and grieving until finally she went mad. After going mad, she naturally began singing many sorrowful songs. The words of the sorrowful songs were all very beautiful, probably because they came from her heart. I don't know if we have such stories here. This is a rather famous story in Tibet. When we were young, many elders often told such stories. Listening to them, the mutual attachment between people is indeed quite pitiful. A few years ago there was one, perhaps some of you know about it. I heard others talk about it, though I haven't seen it myself. The Knot. There was a young couple in Taiwan who got married, but later political turmoil occurred. Taiwan was in upheaval. Later the man went to the mainland as a soldier. It was during the Korean War. After arriving there, he changed his name and married another nurse. Then many years passed. Later, 60 years passed. His original woman from Taiwan, I've forgotten her name, took care of his mother all along under the title of daughter-in-law. After 60 years, perhaps relations between the two sides had improved. 60 years later, she had an opportunity to come to the mainland for an art exhibition. Finally, relying on some relatives, she inquired about her former husband. But she had waited bitterly for 60 years. My goodness! Later, it seems the man on the mainland had perished in an avalanche in Tibet. He was gone. Later, I heard it was made into a film starring some famous actors from Taiwan and the mainland. Actually, it's The Knot, based on this story. In 2006, it had high box office returns, ranking 6th or something. Regardless, from such stories, when worldly people watch this story, after watching it, they seem very moved and shed tears. When His Holiness went to India in the 90s, there was also a movie. When we were in Hong Kong, there were many Hong Kong disciples at the time. Some of the Hong Kong dialect wasn't very understandable. How did they say it? Never mind, you'll laugh at me. They said at the time, man, "Mama love me once more." It told of a child separated from his mother for 18 years, who went abroad and later recognized his own mother. The world's best mama, right? Only mama is good in the world, children without mama. Never mind, or you'll all start singing. Everyone knows how to sing this. At the time they said whoever watched it would shed tears. They called it a crying film. Everyone said this. But the real principle within, I think, is a kind of suffering of separation from loved ones, its most vivid, most alluring focal point. It should be describing what the sutras speak of, human gathering and the suffering after final separation. In Han regions there are many more. For example, the stories of the cowherd and weaver girl, Liang Shanbo and Zhu Yingtai, and the former story of Lu Yu and Tang Wan. When we were studying in the past, there were many various worldly stories. All these stories speak entirely of their mutual attachment, because sentient beings haven't realized emptiness, haven't realized mind nature plus separation and union. This is a gathering of conditions. Most people don't understand, and when they don't understand, it's extremely painful. When the painful situation is described externally, people all feel it's very real. Actually, truly understanding some Buddhist teachings, I think much of it is a gathering of conditions. Formerly, a forest of pearls from the Dharma garden told of a person whose husband was bitten to death by a poisonous snake. That wife had no particular feeling, no particular suffering. People nearby found it strange and asked, "Why don't you cry? Why aren't you sad?" She said, so-called husband and wife, when there's connection, they unite. When there's no connection, they separate. When there's karmic connection, they can unite. When there's no karmic connection, they will separate. There's no suffering in this. It's a natural law. Later, it's said this principle gave rise to what's often said in Han regions. Husband and wife are originally birds of the same forest. When great disaster comes, each flies away. When worldly conditions gather in all aspects, they dwell in one place, but when true disaster appears, each flies away, each returning to their own place. There's no help for it. Karma is originally something we create individually, coming and going alone. Finally coming to this world to experience together this kind of condition in Buddha's Mula Sarvastivada Vinaya. There's also a quite similar teaching that says all loving relationships, though long dwelling together, when time comes to life's end, will separate. All loving relationships, though, everyone gathers together for a long time, but once your life ends or conditions disperse, you'll each go your own way, each dispersing separately. Like birds roosting under a tree who follow their own flight, wives and dependents are all like this. This verse, combined with what we discussed earlier, might be easier to understand. It's like two small birds gathering together under a tree. When sunlight shines, each flies away separately, or when encountering other dangers, each flies away separately. Similarly, relationships between spouses, relationships between dependents and relatives, when conditions are complete, they gather together. When conditions aren't complete, they all disperse separately. Some gurus and disciples are very happy when gathering together, then once they separate, they're very sad. Teachers and students are also very happy when gathering together. Later, when they separate, they're also very sad. When we were studying at Teachers College, there were about 9 classmates from Liangshan Prefecture in our class. They studied for 2 years, while we studied for 4. After studying for 2 years, one day they had to return. Then all of us in the class, about 30 or 40 people, all hugged these 9 people and wouldn't let go. We originally went to see them off in the morning, but everyone was reluctant to let them leave. 1 or 2 people hugged one person each, just like that continuously. Later, the teacher criticized us, saying, "Time is running out. The bus leaves at 6 o'clock. You can't not let go now. The tickets have already been bought." Later, we hugged and cried while escorting them to the bus station. People on the street all watched us. What was the reason for this? Because we hadn't yet studied the principle of the suffering of separation from loved ones. Now let's discuss. However, if we seriously observe, we must observe the content within. We discover that relatives aren't necessarily true relatives. Although parents and others think they have deep affection and extreme love for their children, actually this method of loving is completely upside down. Our relatives, parents, brothers and sisters love us especially, but this method of loving is completely upside down. Ultimately, they can only harm us. Why do we say this? We can think about it. For example, when the son is young, parents originally provided him with many conveniences, stretching out hands for clothes, opening mouths for food. Parents created everything for them. When the time comes to establish a household and career, they also find him a wife as a lifelong companion. For the son, when he grows up and welcomes a wife into the home, actually this is binding them with the rope of samsara. Parents are especially concerned. Now our child is almost 20, almost expired. We must. They often say things like this. Almost 20, 40, 30 years old and still haven't found anyone. Many old lay practitioners often call me, "Master, bless us. What should we do about our family?" One day someone said, "What should we do about our family?" "The lineage is broken." I said, What lineage is broken? Indeed, now it's the era of single children. Truly, the lineage might all be broken. I first thought she was talking about studying the way of the Bodhisattva, so I wondered if the lineage of the way of the Bodhisattva was broken. No, the family lineage was broken, so they bind them with the rope of samsara. They also teach them how to subdue enemies, how to support relatives, how to get rich, and other methods of creating negative actions. Especially if parents are butchers who kill for a living. From childhood, they teach their children how to kill. Now, many parents by the seashore teach from childhood how to eat shrimp, eat frogs, how to eat snakes. Sometimes when we see people eating in restaurants, parents nearby teaching them some eating methods, we also feel very sad. Actually, parents want to be good to them, but their own true expertise is killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, and lying. Besides this, they also can't teach things that are truly beneficial for your present and future lives. They continuously teach them such meaningless things. This undoubtedly leads to their inability to gain liberation from the abyss of lower realms. I'm afraid there's no more serious harm than this. We can think about it. To truly harm a person doesn't necessarily mean using various weapons to stab you face to face. Gradually doing harmful things to your present life and life after life is indeed already harming you. So our parents don't intentionally harm you, but they themselves are too ignorant. Due to environmental influences, education, and various conditions, their own lives also create negative karma. Coming to this world in such an environment, they only learn methods of creating negative karma. Besides this, they don't have very noble, excellent, meaningful, compassionate education. So sometimes we indeed might feel our parents are quite pitiful. Even when we now study Buddhism, become monastics, or do good deeds, they're particularly dissatisfied, feeling that their family and everything has been ruined, and there's no hope they have such feelings. So their way of thinking is upside down, and their behavior is also upside down, because we can see their actions in the worldly realm. Actually, some people think parents are the best, but the good aspects of parents, as the sutras just mentioned, indeed for each child they've still devoted much effort and care. We should repay their kindness. But on the other hand, some people are particularly attached. Someone once said, "If my mother dies, I wouldn't live in this world for even one day. I would definitely either bash my head to death or somehow I would definitely die. I couldn't possibly continue living like this. When I think of my mother not being there, my heart immediately collapses. I immediately can't go on." Some people say such things, but these are all due to not understanding the nature of samsara. Truly, after she dies, whether you'll bash yourself to death is also uncertain. But actually, it's all caused by people not understanding these principles. How do children treat their birth parents? Now let's discuss how children initially, actually as parents, they're particularly loving and attached to their children, but they shouldn't be attached. Many of us think children are 100% beneficial to you, but this isn't so. Truly children who are beneficial and helpful to you are not many. So how do they harm their parents? In the beginning, they absorb the essence of their parents' bodies. In the middle, they snatch food from their mouths. Whatever parents eat, generally when children are young, they don't let parents eat good food. Come me, give it to me. Then they snatch it from their hands and don't let parents eat. Is this how we should interpret it? Finally, they seize the wealth in their hands. No matter how much parents love their children, they in turn oppose their parents. Parents give their whole lives, regardless of countless hardships, regardless of grave sins, regardless of infamous reputation. All the wealth accumulated through hard work is given generously and completely to their children, but they don't have even a drop of gratitude. It seems like nothing, taken for granted. They think that parents accumulating this wealth for them and their own enjoyment of it is as it should be. Even if you just gave an ordinary person a handful of tea leaves, they would be overjoyed and thank you repeatedly. They'd be very grateful. For example, a package of tea leaves or treating them to a meal or doing one good deed for them, they might be grateful to you forever. But even if you give your own children, according to former Tibet, perhaps 50 taels of silver, which is quite a lot, after giving so much, they're completely indifferent. Now, in big cities, some parents suffer greatly. All the wealth they've accumulated in their lifetime is to buy one apartment, then give it to their children, but the children seem to feel nothing. Many people in big cities should know this. No matter how hard parents work, all their lifetime accumulation, all their wealth is given to them, yet they still feel it's as it should be because they're my parents. They feel it's nothing. They also think that their parents' wealth being enjoyed by themselves is perfectly natural. They feel this is as it should be. Moreover, among brothers and sisters, they often compete with each other for wealth, fighting and yielding to no one. Usually, these children don't care about their parents, but once parents become ill, especially when they hear parents are dying, all the related personnel start coming out because they want to divide their parents' wealth. Usually they don't care. Now, many cities have such situations. Even when parents give to them, they have no intention of gratitude. Even when parents have given everything they have, children still ask for more and more. Even if parents have an exquisite pearl for counting in their prayer beads, they'll shamelessly demand it. Would this happen? In Tibet, there is. In Tibet, formerly, whatever good things parents had at home, they would take away. Even a good pearl from their prayer beads, they would take away. I heard of parents in Han regions whose children's conditions were all quite good, but the parents lived in another house, and the house was very simple. Later, someone gave them a television, but after the children came back, they felt, "Parents, your eyesight isn't very good. Could you give us the television? We young people like to watch." The parents were also pitiful and finally gave them the television. So whether Han or Tibetan regions, it's all the same, especially people who don't care much about their parents. Parents also develop some resentment at a certain point. Recently, we sometimes visit nursing homes in Han regions. Some nursing homes have relatively better conditions, some have relatively worse conditions, but some elderly people have a kind of autism, particularly resentful. When we knock on doors, they don't want to come out. If they do come out, they start complaining about heaven and people saying this and that. Very angry. What's the reason? Because they feel that everyone in this world looks down on them. There's a kind of resentment, a particularly uncomfortable expression. So when we give them something very lovingly, they feel it might be intentionally deceptive because they had such hopes for their own children, but later in life they were completely abandoned, not cared for. Finally, they developed a special illness. This also happens. We often encounter it. If it's a virtuous and kind daughter, she will also become the glory of another family. In their family, she can be called a relatively capable person, also considered another family's daughter-in-law. For her own side, there's no benefit at all. If it's a bad daughter, she probably can't stay in another family either, fighting and quarreling, finally divorcing, then bringing children back. Coming back home makes the family very painful too, continuing to live a particularly unhappy life. This also happens. Other relatives are no exception. When you have abundant wealth and happiness, everyone regards you like a deity, doing everything to help and benefit you. Even when you clearly don't need any wealth, connections or anything, they will actively bring food and wealth to your door. Once you're ruined and disgraced, even if you haven't done the slightest wrong, you'll receive treatment like an enemy. The world is like this. Sincerely benefiting them, what you get in return is biting the hand that feeds. From this we can see that children, relatives, and so forth have no real meaning. Generally worldly people, when you have wealth, honor, and everything perfect, everyone is especially respectful to you. So Buddha said in the Jataka stories of the Bodhisattva, wealth and honor are the root of all suffering. Domestic love and affection are like being in prison. Indeed, it's like this. Much wealth and honor, your status and wealth at a certain point are all impermanent, nothing worth believing in. Your family and relatives, if you don't observe carefully, once you observe carefully, there's no difference from prison. Especially as we discuss here, when people feel they have wealth, power, and ability, even when they don't need it, people all gather before them. When you're particularly prosperous, your gate is like a marketplace. Your doorway is like a great marketplace. Coming and going, many cars, many people to see you, many guests, many people praising you. Once you fall or decline, you could catch sparrows at your gate. Only at your doorway might there be a few small birds keeping watch. Besides this, there's nothing. When you have power, you call and hundreds respond. When you speak, 100 people immediately come out. Good, Roger, Roger, no problem. Once you fall into, for example, some retired people now, at such times you call to heaven, but it doesn't answer. No one pays attention to you. I heard some retired old leaders are very sad, because when they were leaders before, others treated them like stars surrounding the moon. Countless people praised and liked them. Whatever they needed, once they stepped down, horses and carriages became scarce. Everyone ignores them. It doesn't matter. So indeed, in life, we need to understand a kind of pattern. The world declines daily. When people leave, tea grows cold. After people leave, at a certain point there's nothing worth hoping for. In Ashvaghosha's garland of examples adorned by poetic fancy, I remember there's a story told quite well. There was a person whose family had been very wealthy for generations, but by his generation, economically and financially, everything went wrong, declining. Finally, he was destitute, penniless, with nothing. At this time, all relatives looked down on him, despised and discriminated against him. Then he himself really had no way to face it. Because they all ignored him, he was very painful. Later, he could only change location. He thought, I'll go to another country. There's no way to survive here. He hoped to have some success and some wealth in another place, so he went to another place. When he left, he was probably a young person. Then in the other place, what he did was quite successful. Money flowed in abundantly. Everything was very good. And then he was going to return home. He heard that the relatives who originally ignored him were all very supportive and happy. Everyone brought food, offerings, flowers, and incense, starting to line up on the street to welcome him. He knew in his heart that actually they didn't like him, they liked his wealth. So he intentionally disguised himself as a person dressed in rags, because when he returned he was an old man, others probably wouldn't recognize his face. So he mixed in with the crowd of people welcoming him. Other people had all his wealth and things loaded on camels coming behind. Those people kept looking for the original relative, asking everywhere. Later they finally recognized him. They said, why are you hiding here? He said, well, what you like is you. When they first asked him, well, that person's name was Jnana Bhadra. Someone asked, wait, where is he? He said, in the back. So later they recognized him. Why did you say you're in the back? He said, what you need isn't me. What you need is what's on the camels. Because the camels carry much wealth. What you need is what's behind. So he used this rhetorical method to address them. So worldly people sometimes indeed, their joy toward a person, their respect toward a person, people are quite ignorant. It's not necessarily truly for the person himself. They all have purposes. We once had a place where a tulku returned home. Perhaps he hadn't returned home for 50 or 60 years. He came back from America. I heard his relatives and friends were incredibly happy, preparing for a very long time. But that tulku, perhaps he was a practitioner or something, after coming, didn't give anyone a single cent. Very plainly, with everyone, when he left, not one person went to see him off. So, this world sometimes truly. When Nasruddin was a tribal chief, his neighbor boldly asked, "You have so many guests every day. Who exactly are your friends?" Then Nasruddin said, "I won't say now. After I step down and become a commoner, I'll tell you the source of my friends." He also knew people's habits. Once he truly stepped down, he wouldn't have friends. This was his meaning. So here it says, relatives are all without any meaning, just as Milarepa said. When Milarepa was in retreat at Bright Cave, he went to Menjin to beg for alms and stayed at an old couple's house. The old couple saw that Milarepa looked good and had good character. They said, "Do you have relatives? Where are you from?" He said, "I don't have relatives. I'm like a beggar here." Then they said, "You shouldn't suffer like this in the future. Stay at our house. We have land you can cultivate later. Then find a girl. You can have a lovely child later. This way you'll have many, many relatives and friends." Milarepa said, "I don't need a son." And he sang this song. Sons are initially delightful like celestials. Beyond description is the compassionate heart. In the middle, they excessively demand like creditors. Though giving everything, there's never a time of joy. At first, sons are lovely like celestials beyond description. People call them sweetie, baby, all sorts of names. In the middle, they become true debt collectors. Though giving them everything, there's never a moment of joy. Bringing in others' daughters while driving out beneficent parents, not answering when father calls, not responding when mother calls, later becoming cold neighbors. What to do? Today time is tight and I can't speak it out. Anyway, this is easy to understand. Never mind. Colluding with cunning ones to create negative karma, self-generated enemies pierce the heart. Should sever samsara's binding rope. Worldly descendants I don't seek. He said, when worldly sons grow up and marry others' daughters, no matter how parents call, they don't care about them. Finally, they become neighbors with very cold relationships. Then, they often do bad things. Such heart-piercing sons I don't like. I want to sever the root of samsara, so I don't need such worldly sons. This was Milarepa's first song. Then the old couple said, "If you don't want sons, then having a daughter would still be lovely. You should want that, right?" He sang another song. Daughters initially have smiling faces like fairy children, possessing great power to plunder treasures. In the middle, demanding debts endlessly, openly demanding from father, secretly stealing from mother. Look, are you all like this? Giving but not knowing gratitude, hating greatly kind parents, later becoming red-faced Rakshasa women, if good, others' glory. Actually, this has already been explained above. If evil, source of one's own harm, harmful demonesses pierce the heart, severing unconscious sorrow, the source of eternally uninteresting worry is daughters, calamitous daughters I don't seek. Daughters are the root of all calamities. Where are the lovely little girls? Little girls aren't needed either, said Milarepa. Then the old man said, if you don't need boys or girls, no children, if you have no relatives and friends, others will bully you. You should need relatives, right? They asked. He said relatives aren't needed either. Relatives too. When you're happy, they're overjoyed. But when you suffer or fall, they can't help you either. Relatives initially meet with joyful faces. Intimate interactions fill the valleys. At first, they're especially intimate with each other. Han regions are like this. Tibetan regions too. At first, when children marry, after some time, you invite me, I invite you, very enthusiastic. Then in the middle, wine and meat like repaying debts, sending once, returning once. They invite once, we invite once. It's all conditional, not like at the beginning. Their attitude seems not so good, so we should treat them likewise. Our daughter has also become like this. Our son is also such and such. The mutual relationship becomes increasingly stiff and bad. Later, becoming causes of greed, anger, and quarrels. Evil friends, causes of lawsuits pierce the heart. Abandoning companions of joyful times. I don't want to, when happy, eat with some people, chat with some people. These evil friends are relatives. These are generally meaningless in worldly terms, so worldly relatives I don't seek. Milarepa said worldly relatives aren't needed, sons and daughters aren't needed. The meaning is, see through this life. Seeing through this life is difficult for practitioners, but indeed, to truly understand the suffering of separation from loved ones, seeing through this life is still very important. Without seeing through this life every day, you're either thinking of children and parents or thinking of your relatives. Being attached like this every day, where's the time for practice? Your heart is completely filled with relatives. Then there's no place left for true great compassion. So true practitioners view worldly things very lightly. Of course, for some householders, completely seeing through and abandoning all family might not be possible, but you also shouldn't be too attached. Once they leave or are lost, there's no need to be especially sad or excessive. This is samsara's pattern. If you understand this principle, I think much practice will naturally be quite successful. If we've practiced for a very long time, but once our relatives leave or are lost, we're still especially painful and can't continue living, such an attitude, I don't think that's a practitioner. So everyone should properly contemplate the suffering of separation from loved ones.
Om